What is up, boys and girls? Today I'm going to teach you guys how to create a multi-phase ABAB design graph. Like I said in the first one, we did learn how to create a single phase graph, and now what we're going to do is design a multi-phase graph. So it's distinguished from a single phase graph by obviously having more than one phase or more than one independent variable. So that can be a treatment or a condition, whatever's introduced to try to manipulate the dependent variable. Okay, and also phase lines. So phase lines represent a change in the phase. Okay, and obviously this design here is used to show a functional relation between the change in the independent variable and the change in the dependent variable. So it's usually used to prove that the functional relation does exist between the intervention and the behavior, and it just shows that the behavior or the change in the independent variable has experimental control. Okay, so let me start from scratch here. Let's create a new one, blank workbook. Okay, when we start this, what I would do is I would use just one set of titles at the top, because if you do multiple titles, Excel can kind of create some issues for you. So in this case, we're going to use trials. When you use trials in graphing, you can specify how long the trials were in each of your data points in your literature. So if it's 1 day, it's going to be 1 day. You know, if it's 1 hour, it's going to be 1 hour, and so on and so forth. In this case, we can pretend like it was maybe 1 day. Okay, so let's say that for the first box, we want to select the first box and write in trials, and then we're going to look at actually let's just use 2 dependent variables to make it a little bit easier. Like you can see in this one right here, we used 3. So we used slapping, biting, and pinching. In this one, we're going to create maybe just 2, just for demonstration purposes. So let's say it's going to be punching. So we're going to assume they're punching other people and that they're kicking other people. Okay, and let's say that those are 2 different behaviors that we're interested in decreasing. Okay, so what I would do is I would start off by creating the number of trials that you want. For this demonstration purposes, we're just going to use 10. So we can say in total the baseline and intervention phases were an equal amount of time. And again, this is for demonstration purposes. This is not exactly the reality. So we're going to say there's 10 trials. Once you have 2 input, to make it a little bit faster, you can select both and scroll down until you get to 10. And then we can start inputting data. So we can say that every time the kid is asked to do something, they punch somebody. So let's say it happened 22 times the first day, 25 times the second day, 35 times the third day, 22 again, 15, 18, 30, 35, 41, 22. Okay. Then the kicking would be about roughly a little bit less, let's say like somewhere between 11 and 12 per day. Okay, and in order to make this a little bit easier, what I would do is I would highlight all of these, select the border tool, highlight all borders and make it into a chart, then select the top and make it a certain color that's kind of stands out. I always like to use the first row right here in all the colors instead of these ones, because I feel like these are all very neutral. So I'll just use the gray one. Okay, and then for the first phase, so what I want to do is create kind of like a phase chart here, so I can know what phase I'm in. I'm gonna write in the phase. So let's say this is baseline. Okay. And then what I want to do to make this a lot easier for myself is change the phase color to the color of the data. So let's say that for the phase I want to use, let's say this green right here. So for baseline I'm going to use green. I want to highlight all my data and make it green. Then also here I probably want to just box this in so it stands out. Okay, then we can move on to the next phase. So when we do it, we don't want to repeat, like take this and put it here, because when you try to graph the data like this, it's going to create errors in Excel. So we don't want that. Instead, what we can do is grab these and pull them down until we get 20. So we're going to say that the next intervention is going to be about the same. It's going to be the same number of trials. So now what we want to say is intervention. Okay, so let's say that for this case, we, instead of acknowledging the behaviors and giving the individual access to whatever they want, let's say we just ignore them. So that's going to be our intervention phase, or our first phase change. And for that one, we can use this color. Okay, I'm going to box it in. So let's say that initially when it happens, there's an extinction burst, and then it starts to go down until it basically just dies out. Let's say for this one it's the same thing. Okay, and again we want to box the whole thing in, and we want to change it to the same color as the phase. So now we can see a change in the phase visually already prior to even graphing the data. Okay, just miss this box. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to repeat baseline condition. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this here. In order to demonstrate experiment control, we want to discontinue the treatment so that we can see if it'll return to baseline, to see if the treatment is the reason why the behavioral frequency changed. So in this case we're using frequency for each of the behaviors. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just grab this and make it up to 30. Okay, and let's say it starts at 0, goes 0, comes back, say 30, 35, 40. So it starts to go back on the rise when we start to give them access to whatever it is that they wanted before. Again, before I even type in the data, it might be a good idea to just change this to this. Okay, and then we can continue here. Let's say that, again, starts. So basically during return to baseline, you're going to see regression back to about these rates of behavioral frequency, even if at the beginning the treatment is still keeping them at a low percent. Okay, and then the final phase, we'll be putting the intervention back into place so that we can replicate the initial changes. Okay. And again, to do that, we're going to add 10 more trials. And then we're going to make a box here and change the color. Say at a return, we get 35, we get 15, we get 12, 40, and then we get 5, 2, 6, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So now effectively what we have is we have our data. So this is our chart right here, or the data we're about to chart. So now we can move on to creating the actual line graph. Okay, and again, in order to make this much easier, the phase changes and everything will be put to the side, so the data is all pretty much together. Okay, so what we can do is we can select the punching and kicking, which are all your dependent variables. So if there's another dependent variable here, you can select it as well. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to select these two and scroll all the way down to the last data point. You can just insert a chart and then do this manually, but this is much easier. So again, we're going to go to the auto chart tool or the quick analysis tool, click on charts, click more, under charts, click all charts, line graph, and we want to line with markers. Select the first one. Okay, let's remove the legend. Okay, make it a little bit bigger. Okay. And then immediately what we want to do is click select data, and we want to edit the right side and select trials as the independent variable. Okay. Now we click OK, and nothing changed. It just maps trials to the chart. Okay. Now what we want to do is obviously do what we did in the first one. So we want to remove grid lines, and we want to change the colors of the lines. Let's say this is this line to black. Oops. Single click. If you double click, you select the single line. Change it to black. Select the markers, marker options built in, and pick something that's going to be different than the other dependent variables. So in this case, let's just use a triangle. I like to have it at size 10, and then change the fill color to black and the border color to black. Okay, and do the same thing for the next one. For the color, we will select black, border color black, built in. So this one's going to be a square, size 10, and then make sure the line is also black. So far we have exactly the same chart that we started with in the first tutorial. We can actually also add the axis titles. So in this case, the bottom title is going to be trials or trial, because we're looking at each individual trial. And then for the dependent variable measurement, we're going to use frequency. Okay, now we can zoom in a little bit for the next step. Okay, so the next step is going to involve separating the data paths during each phase, and this is why we use 10. So it's very easy for us to see where the change in the phase begins and ends. Let's just look at this. So every 10 it's going to be a change. So when we look at the data here, we can see that at number 11 it changes, at number 21 it's going to change, at number 31 it's going to change. So at 30, 20, and 10 we want to create a phase line. So we want to break the data. Okay, so in order to do that, you have to find number 10. So trial 10 is right here. We want to go up and find the first point in trial 10. So we click on the data point once, we'll select all the data points in the series, click it twice so that it's the only one selected, or you can just right click it and select format data point, not points. with an S, but point with no S, okay? And then you want to click on the fill in line tool, and under line you want to click no line, basically to break it off from the previous phase. And you want to do the same thing to every other point in the phase change line, okay, on each dependent variable. So again, we're going to repeat it. We're going to do the same thing for trial 20. Let's say no line. And we're going to do the same thing for trial 30. No line. You can zoom out. Now we can see that our data is basically fractured at point 10, point 20. Let's deselect this so you can see it a little bit better. And point 30. Okay. At that point, what we want to do now is start to create the phase lines. So in order to create the phase lines, what we're going to do is click Insert, click Shape, and select the line with no arrow on it. So the plain line. You might want to zoom in a little bit. Okay. At point 10 right here, press it. It's going to be kind of squiggly. So in order to make it less squiggly, you might just, let me just get rid of this so I can zoom out a little bit so I can see the top of the chart. Okay. Again, insert, shape, line. Okay, and you see how it is like this? Just hold shift and it'll go just straight. Then just push it up to the top of the chart. Once you have it in place, you want to change the color to black. Okay. Now repeat it at every 10th interval. Okay. Shape, line, black, shape, line, black. So now you can see that the chart has the phase lines, and you're pretty much all set, but you have to now put in titles for each phase. Okay, so you can grab the chart title for the first one and just put it right at the first one and change that one to baseline. And for the next series, because obviously you can't repeat the title, what you have to do is click Insert, and you want to insert a text box. Okay, click back onto this one, so we can just say this is ignored. So that's the intervention, but click back on this one and take note that this is size 14 and it's Calibri. So click on this one and increase it to size 14. And then reposition it so it's relatively in the same area as the first one. Then to make this a little bit easier, you can just click on this one, select the whole thing, copy it, and then paste it. Copy and paste. And then just change the text back to baseline. And now the final step to complete the entire chart is just click the plus button and add the legend back. Okay, once you add the legend again, it's suggested that you click Format Legend and you put them on the bottom. And this would be considered a ABAB design, or in other words, a reversal. So basically, this is exactly what you're going to be doing when you create separate phases and you end up graphing them, and you just keep repeating it. Once you learn how to do it, it's very simple. You can keep going for a very long period of time, and basically that's pretty much everything that you're going to learn in this video. In the next one, we're probably going to teach you guys how to create multiple baselines, as well as how to create cumulative records. Probably it's going to be two separate videos, but if anybody is confused about anything, or if you know, you guys have any suggestions or questions, just leave notes at the bottom. I'd also appreciate if you would help me out a little bit by subscribing to this channel and letting me know what you think. If this didn't help you at all, you can thumb it down. If it helped you, just thumb it up and share it, whatever else you want to do. Okay, thanks so much guys, you have a great day, and good luck with your graphing.